Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are the four big stories for today. So, President Xi is meeting with Vladimir Putin in China right now. And rather than look at the AP's view of this, let's look at what RT has to say, because often it's very insightful if you can understand what they're trying to communicate. So, China ties are model of relations between great powers, says Xi. Chinese President Xi hailed ties with Moscow as a, quote, model of relations between large powers, as he met with his Russian counterpart. Ties between Beijing and Moscow are a model of relations between large powers and neighboring states characterized by mutual respect, trust, friendship, and mutual benefit, the Chinese president said. The Russian president agreed, saying, quote, our cooperation in world affairs is one of the main stabilizing factors on the international stage, unquote. Really? That's a main factor in stabilizing the international stage? Not overthrowing the international order by invading your neighbor when they weren't a threat to you is much more of a factor, but okay. China and Russia both, quote, defend the principles of fairness and a democratic world order based on the multipolar realities and international law, Putin said, adding that relations between the two countries, quote, are not aimed against anyone, unquote. I think that, Ukraine might beg to differ about some of this, the fairness of the democratic world and international law and things not being aimed and whatever else. Okay, second article here. This is also RT. No place for military blocs in Asia Pacific, says Putin. Attempts to establish such alliances are harmful and counterproductive for regional security, the Russian president has said. So what is he talking about here? I'm going to show you in just a moment. Let's hear what he has to say. The Asian Pacific region should be free of military blocs because of their potential to undermine the security balance, Russian President Vladimir Putin said. He said both powers were pursuing an independent foreign policy as they strive for a more just, democratic, multipolar world order. So, okay, he's talking about this. So, Japan is seeking to work with South Korea and the Philippines to bolster regional security because China wanting to take Taiwan is kind of a threat. In fact, there already exists this bloc. Whether they admit it formally or not, Russia and China and North Korea are pretty chummy, right? So, Japan and Korea and the Philippines and Thailand and to some degree Australia are also working to protect potentially Taiwan from being invaded by China, and that's what they're talking about here. So Putin doesn't want to see that happen. He just says, well, we're just doing our own independent thing. You're kind of a bloc. Okay. We believe that the creation of such alliances is harmful and counterproductive. Meanwhile, Xi noted that Cold War mentality remained rampant in the international arena, warning that unilateral hegemony, bloc confrontation, and power politics directly threaten the whole world and security of all countries. Now, when they're talking about this unilateral hegemony, they're always pointing back to the United States and saying, see, that's the global hegemon. China says it, Russia says it, they're always pointing at that. Never mind the hegemony of Russia trying to dominate Moldova and Ukraine and Georgia. Never mind the actual hegemony going on. There's always the boogeyman out there of the United States. The U.S. has also a separate treaty alliances with Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Thailand. And I showed you that here. But again, it's to defend Taiwan against China's would-be aggression. The U.S. and UK and Australia has also created a security partnership called AUKUS, which involves Washington, London, assisting Australia in acquiring nuclear-powered submarines, and that would bolster some security from a Western perspective in this region. Okay, Putin's negotiations with Beijing are so successful that Russian state media claims that China will now allow Russia to sell them Jerusalem artichokes. It's good news. Okay, among other things, that's what's happening with the discussions today. All right, let's switch gears to big story number two. Big story number two is about oil. And Bill Browder, a number of you sent me this and said, hey, you've got to watch this. Bill Browder talking about oil loopholes. Now, he's talking in the context here, what you're about to see, about India. But the same kind of sentiment applies to Turkey as well. Let's listen.
I've got the names of the refineries that refine Russian oil and sell it back to us. And I just want to put it out there, put it on the record, so that we should think about either applying sanctions to these refineries or creating some type of legislation where we're not allowed to buy oil from these refineries or source them. And I'm just going to put it out here for the record. In India, we have the Vadinar refinery, which is 49% owned by Russia's state oil company Rosneft, and they receive Russian oil and they sell Russian oil refined product back to us. We have the Jamnagar refinery in the Gulf of Kutch on India's western coast, which is a leading destination for Russian crude arriving in India. We have the Bharat Petroleum, which is a state-run company. And then we have the Hindustan Petroleum.
Okay, so you get the idea there. India is sucking up oil as fast as they can take it. Brazil's doing the same thing. But Turkey? Yeah, Turkey's doing it too. Russian oil is being massively routed to the EU via Turkey, which has become a key transit point. From February 2023 to February 2024, Turkey's purchase of Russian oil increased by 105%, and its fuel exports to the EU rose by 107%. The scheme's only possible because of a workaround in Brussels sanctions that allows blended fuels into the EU if they're labeled as non-Russian. So they label them as non-Russian and then they sell it back. This is just showing what they're actually taking in. Okay, this article is really fascinating. This is how Turkey became Putin's pit stop for selling camouflaged fuel to the EU. Russian oil is hidden with new markings. That's part of a much broader trend, and it's illegal. The scheme is possible because of a workaround in Brussels sanctions that allows blended fuels into the EU if they're labeled as non-Russian. It's a lucrative loophole, with research showing it generated up to $3 billion for Moscow from 3 ports alone in just 12 months after the EU banned Russian fuels from February 2023. Turkey has emerged as a strategic pit stop for Russian fuel products rerouted to the EU, generating hundreds of millions in tax revenues for the Kremlin war chest. Before Moscow's invasion, the EU relied on Russia. Now, this is how dependent the EU was on Russian oil. For a quarter of its crude imports and 40% of its diesel purchases, something that changed drastically after the bloc agreed to a blanket ban on both products in 2022. But the geographical situation of several Turkish ports, combined with import-export data, strongly indicates that considerable amounts of Russian fuel has simply been repackaged and passed on. And Turkey's part of NATO, and Turkey's supposed to be in the European sphere, and Turkey's supposed to be kind of an ally, and yeah, that's where we are. Third big story. 3 retired Republican senators are creating a resistance movement against former President Donald Trump and the MAGA populists that they argue are usurping the party of former President Abraham Lincoln. So I think that's right. I think that the populist movement looks very similar to conservatives. It's different in nature, and some people have a hard time distinguishing between them, but it is different. In short, this group will be a catalyst for a movement to reassert traditional republicanism against populist version it has become under Donald Trump. And you see this here reported in The Hill today. You saw this 2 days ago here in Raw Story. And yeah, so retired senators Alan Simpson of Wyoming, John Danforth of Missouri, William Cohn of Maine announced Tuesday in a Washington Post editorial their intention to fight radical conservatism with political organization to honor what they called our Republican legacy, which is different than the populism that currently is. Recently, it has become popular to assert that this traditional brand of republicanism is dead. I don't think it is, and I hope to fight for it to regain what it once was and stop being what it currently is. Replaced by a new populist radical version, they write, and we disagree. Okay. You don't have to disagree, but I do, and I want to fight to take the Republican Party back. In short, the Republicans write, this group will be a catalyst for a movement to reassert traditional republicanism against the populist version that it has become under Donald Trump. The group hopes our Republican legacy, that's the name, will fill a void. So while we're looking at that, we have things like This is former Georgia Lieutenant Governor saying that his job is to provide air cover because, well, some people just can't bring themselves to say that Donald Trump's wrong for the party. Let's hear what he has to say.
I truly see this playing out as it's politically expedient to be alongside Donald Trump. Privately, I have a number of individuals that even publicly say that they support Donald Trump.
In New York,
privately come to me and say, "Look, the time is going to be favorable to you. History is going to be favorable to this opinion of getting rid of this guy as quickly as we can, and as soon as we do, then we'll be able to move on." My job, and I think the job of others that are really of this mindset, is to provide the air cover for those that maybe aren't willing to step out of the gates and say Donald Trump is wrong for not only this party, but for this country. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to provide as much air cover as I can, take the heat, and continue to do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, Donald Trump is absolutely wrong for this country. And it just continues to play out. Even as you watch.
Okay, so there's that, and then there's also things like this. This was Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, talking about his former boss. The depth of his dishonesty is just astounding to me. He's the most flawed person I've ever met in my life. And you see that again and again with people that worked for him that are saying, look, I just can't do this again with him. Okay, at the same time, you see folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying this, but you know what she said? I believe too, but for different reasons. Just listen.
People are fed up with this. They're looking at Republicans in Washington and laughing at us. They think we are a complete joke, and I'll say it over and over again.
But they think we're a complete joke for different reasons than you think that they think we're a complete joke. So this is a pretty popular meme of a boyfriend who is distracted by another woman walking down the street, and she's looking at him going, what? Well, I think this is probably the best, most effective use of this meme. Conservative Christians, here's Jesus, and there's Trump. Ooh, look at the... So fellow evangelicals, is this accurate? And if it is, do you need to reevaluate some things? So here's our update on the Jake Bro fundraiser. He's going for $1 million this morning at about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, something like that. It was $898,000. And let's see where it is right now. And we're up to $952,000. I think by the end of the day, we will hit $1 million, and that's just awesome. I've donated. I would urge you to do the same thing. And if you do donate, you can also have your own NAFO fella image made, and you can dress it up however you want to make it your NAFO fella. And this is absolutely awesome to see what the fundraiser has done in just 5 days. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, shares, subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares